All right, we'll give it maybe to 7:04 or until the beeps slow down before we get going. All right, looks like we have 35 people and things are slowing down, and it is 4 after, so we will go ahead and get started. I do, just forewarning, I have to admit folks that are joining the call, so if you see me kind of look over to my other screen or pause, I'm just admitting folks on. So, all right, so thank you all for joining. This is the Red River Gorge Climbers Coalition's annual open meeting where we are discussing 2022 as well as looking forward into 2023. Just a reminder for everybody that may not have heard it before, this meeting is being recorded and we will share the link out afterwards. And then, of course, feel free to ask questions in the chat. We'll try to answer those as we go. Anything that does not get answered in the chat, we'll talk about afterwards in the Q&A session. So let's get started. Again, we'll just do some introductions. So my name is Jake Ellis. I'm the current president. And then we have Jeremy Rancic over here. Going down the list as our vice president and chair of the Access and Acquisitions Committee. We have Brianna Blanchard as our secretary and chair of the Education, DEI, and Outreach Committee. We have Matt Fronick, who is our treasurer and chair of our Operations Committee. Curtis Gale Dyer is our land manager and chair of the Conservation and Stewardship Committee. And we have a handful of board member at large members. Amber Garvey, the recent new board member. She is working on the Marketing and Communications Committee. Brian Ogawa is a new board member at large this year, working on the Access and Acquisitions Committee. Kat Runner, another new board member this year, who's on several other committees. Colin Howell is our chair of our Marketing and Communications Committee. He's working with the social media for the RRGCC. Then we have Curtis Rogers, our last new addition for board members at large this year, is on the Education, DEI, and Outreach Committee and does a lot with events. And then John Bruns, the co-chair of our Access and Acquisitions Committee. Nick Hart, the chair of our Membership and Fundraising Committee. And then Sam North, the co-chair of the Education, DEI, and Outreach Committee. So that's the board of directors. And then Billy Simic is our executive director. Bill Strachan, our Executive Director Emeritus, and then Zane Path, the Land Maintenance Assistant that helps out with some of those things. So, all right, so we'll get into the agenda here. So next up, we're going to be reviewing the mission and strategy, and then diving into a little bit of our board and committee structure, and looking into our 2023 strategic goals, and then some committee updates and membership program updates, and finishing with our acknowledgments and some Q&A. So we will go ahead and get started looking at our mission and strategy. And our mission and strategy, it isn't something that has changed in recent years. However, we do want to review this and just make sure that we're moving in the right direction as we make decisions as board. So our mission, we're dedicated to securing and protecting open public access to rock climbing in the Red River Gorge area of Kentucky and promoting conservation of the environment on the lands where we climb. So I think when we get into the future slides, looking at our committees and things that we're doing, I think you'll see that we're really working towards this mission with the work that we're doing. And then we break our mission down into these 4 points for our strategy. So we'll kind of look through those. First, secure the highest quality climbing opportunities, whether in public or private land. So that goes into, securing and protecting that access to rock climbing. And that looks at, of course, our acquisitions like PMRP and some of the others that we've we've gone through it, but also looking at public and private lands, trying to make those relationships work and try to get access to those climbing areas, even if it's not something that we own. And then into number 2 and really 3 and 4, looking at the conservation and preservation of those lands, making climb sustainable for climbers and the environment. So really looking at the sustainability of managing the increased number of climbers, and especially the floods that we've had recently, just battling that erosion and just having that need for conservation and preservation work on our lands, as well as the lands where we climb that might not be our properties. And then number 3, providing that exemplary stewardship of the natural environment of the lands where we climb. So, number 2, we're doing the work. Number 3, we're stewarding the lands, really making sure that we're following those best practices. And then number 4, educating the climbers about access issues, encouraging them to take ownership for their behavior and its impact on access. So here we've done the work, we're stewarding, and now we're just trying to make sure that we can educate all the climbers that are on, whether it's our property or other properties, say Forest Service, state, just trying to make sure that they feel like they are owning those practices as well. So moving on to our committees, again, for 2022, we had a really good goal of trying to expand our committees. So on this list, you'll see those little asterisks are non-board members. So we've expanded a lot of these committees to include more volunteers and try to allow us to get some more work done and expand into other areas in the community. So just going down the list here, fundraising and membership. Nick Hart is the chair of that one, where we're focusing on grants, receiving fundraising in different ways, and then of course that membership program that Billy and Nick really do a great job on. Events and sponsorship, of course, we're looking at Rocktoberfest, JATD, this year Red River Reunion and the Red in a Day, or the trivia nights that we started putting together, just all of those events, and then working with our local and national sponsors to, help us further those events and fundraising. Operations, our day-to-day, we're looking at legal, taxes, accounting, bookkeeping. So Matt Froelich is our treasurer, just in a great position to take care of those day-to-day operations and make sure we're on pace for those. Marketing communications, protecting the RRGCC brand, putting us in the right position, internal communications as well as external communications, social media, our newsletter, those kinds of things. And then governance, the internal, protecting the organization, making sure that we're building the board, elevating, and just doing a lot of the things that may not be seen outward, but they're really important to the organization. And then looking at some of our functional committees, access and acquisitions, the one that a lot of people hear about and see about and ask questions. We're always looking to find new acquisitions. Even in 2022, we had a potential acquisition that didn't quite go through that Jeremy can talk about later. But of course, we're trying to find those purchases as well as those public land accesses for, say, Forest Service again, or even private owners that we might be able to come to an agreement or maybe have some leases or something like that, just to get access to climbing or potentially acquiring those. And then conservation and stewardship, managing, again, conservation and preservation of our properties, and then creating those relationships with the Forest Service and seeing if we can steward some of those lands as well, because we climb on many properties. Education, DEI, and outreach, a relatively new committee, but a really important committee. It's really responsible for engaging with the community on topics like diversity and inclusion in the climbing world. And we have those great programs like Climb Late, Rock Late, and really aiming to educate the community about those barriers and inequalities in climbing, and seeing how us as an organization can try to help those. And then, so thinking about our committees, really looking at our 2023 strategic focus. And for those that may have been at our 2022 meeting last year, or I guess it was 2022, but looking at 2021, our goals, some of these may look familiar, and a lot of these just take time. So especially when we're looking at access and acquisitions, we talked last year about some opportunities for potential access, and that's still a goal for us this year. We're still working, very, very hard on making sure those relationships are there, and we're ready to pounce on any acquisitions or just open access that we can. And then 3 and 4 there, we released the bolting MOU. So really dipping our toe into potentially managing some more bolting and anchors on our property that in the past we haven't really done. So 3 and 4, for 4 we also opened that route submission form. So we're not quite fully there yet, but we're starting to see how we can, kind of get into some of the route management on our properties. And then conservation stewardship, we've already touched on a few times. There's just a lot of work to be done, especially, with big projects with nursery, Ronaw, Chaos. A lot of these have already started, and you'll see more of these at Johnny and Alex Trail Day this year. But of course, there's the constant road maintenance and conservation improvements that we all see, especially fixing bridges and things like that from the recent floodings. Education, DI, and outreach, we're constantly seeing more of those climb late events that Brianna and her committee are putting together, as well as those rock lates and Jim to Crags. And then that third bullet point there, trying to work on some indigenous relationships as it pertains to stewardship and conservation, and thinking about, maybe archaeological policies and thinking about our land or future acquisitions and how we can think about those indigenous relationships as we move forward. And then looking at our operational, these are more day-to-day, thinking about how we can keep the organization running as needed. So governance, again, we're looking to build that board, making sure that the board and committees are running effective and efficient. And then making sure that whenever we're ready, we can define those responsibilities of paid staff members in case the organization is in that good position where we can give Billy some help with some more paid staff, maybe some marketing or paid land management, to really help the organization move towards that supervisory board rather than, where we have a lot of volunteers doing the hands-on work. Same with operations, just trying to be proactive. We're improving our documentation and bookkeeping. Jeremy did a fantastic job in that as well. And just being proactive on things like we have those potential acquisitions. So creating those proactive processes and documentation for those future land acquisitions in case, we need to act quickly. So just trying to make sure that we can focus on getting the work done and being efficient when we do that. Fundraising and membership, constantly hoping to make sure that our members are happy with what we're giving them. Making sure the swag and the incentives are working well and making sure that it's easy for our members to use. And then of course, trying to find those grants. We had some real improvements and just, already this year getting access to new grants. So it's already trending in the right direction. And of course, events and sponsorship, just expanding those sponsors like we did last year. Billy did a great job of bringing on some of those new sponsors and making Rocktoberfest really an even better events, and then of course incorporating that DEI into some of our larger and small events. Marketing communications, really just continuing to improve. Again, we have the newsletter and some of our annual marketing and things, as well as trying to dip into some merchandising and get some sweet swag out to our members and community members that might be interested in showing off some of the RRGCC stuff. So that's our 2023 goals. Hopefully we're making progress on what we said we were. And I really think that when we look into our membership program, for instance, that I'll let Billy talk about, I think we're trending in the directions for a lot of those already this year.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. So speaking of goals, our goal for, our second year of the membership program last year was just to not lose members, to keep that baseline. We had a lot of people that were really excited about the membership program in that inaugural year, and we were able to meet that goal and actually gained about 15 extra members on top of that for last year. And so we're looking to kind of push that forward and grow it this upcoming year now that we kind of know where that baseline is. And this is a lot of thanks to some of our sponsors that offer really great incentives for all of our members. You can see there at the bottom the list of who's going to be on for this year. Two new ones to note are Rock Sport Gym up in Louisville, and then One Love that was actually one of our sponsors at Rocktoberfest this past year as well. The tiers for each of the members has stayed the same in terms of the pricing breakdown for the third year. The only difference will be, again, some of those membership incentives from the sponsors. And then the tier 3, the extra incentive this year is going to be an RRGCC beanie. You can kind of see it, but they're pretty sweet. We had those embroidered by a shop up in Cincinnati. And I think that You guys will all really like those. You can see the new color for the membership shirt for this upcoming year as well there, and all the other details you can go and find out online on our membership page, and all the exact breakdowns of what kind of incentives our sponsors are giving this year. And yeah, just you guys should all go sign up. It all goes back to our organization, back to everything that Jake just said. So this has been a really great program to, kind of fund all those great things that we've been doing.
Cool. Thanks, Billy. Next, I'll pass it off to Jeremy. He's the chair of our Access and Acquisitions Committee to talk about some of the work they're doing.
How's it going, everybody? So what I put together here was a breakdown of routes in the red, and I know it's actually short because there's tons of routes out there that I don't even know about and aren't published. But if you look at the growth of climbing, it has really blown up. The Bronow book back in the late 90s had around 1,000 routes in it. Ray's first book in 2005 had around 1,300. Red River Climbing, believe it or not, is up to over 3,200 routes. And if you factor in routes that are not documented or on private land and not in any guidebook, we get well over 3,500. We're probably, if every route that was out there was on this, I'm sure it's over 4,000, might even be a couple hundred higher. The chart below that, I think, is the important one, and one I'm proud of for the coalition and for the community. We've got 44% of the routes on coalition property, and then if we add in Muir Valley on top of that, saying there's another 10% that is permanently protected, more than half of all the climbing in the red is open to the public and is permanently secured, and that's really important. When we look at the other two pie slices there, around 30% being on Forest Service land, that's positive. We have a good relationship with the Forest Service, and a couple of years ago we signed a memorandum of understanding to continue to work with them. And we're optimistic that in the long run there is opportunity for additional route development on Forest Service land. It's going to take some time because the Forest Service has certain requirements they have to work through. That said, that's also at risk. Policy changes at the U.S. Forest Service or at other governmental agencies can impact access. So that's something that we're continuing to work on. And we have a very strong relationship with the Forest Service right now. You may not hear a whole lot about it because it moves very slow, but we made some good comments and had good interactions with them as they were working on the forest management plan redo. And I think you guys should pay attention to some things coming down the pike. Thinking about what we've got as far as acquisitions and additional access, we're working on a couple of different opportunities right now. We have one that I'm really excited about where somebody has indicated they're willing to donate a substantial amount of cliff line. I hope to be able to announce more information about that later this year, but those sorts of deals require some confidentiality until we really got it all figured out, and they can take some time. We're also looking at trying to get access to or lease some existing climbing that abuts the PMRP. More specifically, you're probably aware that there's a substantial amount of existing climbing and a couple of closed crags that are on oil company property, and we're having active ongoing conversations with them about access. Those conversations have been very positive, which is one reason we need to be respectful of not trespassing and creating issues with our neighbors. There's another very large opportunity related to purchase where we're working with some nationwide nonprofits to bring some additional money to the table for that. And I'm sorry that I can't speak in more specifics, but for a lot of these deals and opportunities, the parties we're working with have asked for a certain level of confidentiality. One of the other big goals that we've got that the committee is going to work on this year is more outreach to private owners. And I'll give you an example of one. A really great crag, the zoo, is on property that's owned by a private individual who happens to be kind enough to let us access that property, but that may not go on forever. So we're going to take some stronger initiatives this year to reach out to those private property owners and make sure that we have good relationships with them so that A, if they have any issues, we're aware of it and can try to address it, and B, be in a position to be an exit strategy if in the future they ever considered that owning that property is not the right thing for them going forward. Related to route development on coalition property, that is one area where the coalition has historically stayed sort of out of the mix, and we've had a lot of debates about this, but we've decided to implement a memorandum of understanding with route developers. So if you are interested or currently actively developing on the coalition property, please go to our website and read and complete the memorandum of understanding. It is not a route submission process where we're going to evaluate whether or not your route is worthy or unworthy or requires certain intricacies to be approved or not approved. It's more about keeping the coalition informed about the route development so that if we need to do infrastructure changes, we can handle those. We may ask you to hold back on publishing something if we feel like infrastructure requirements would dictate that. We haven't taken any action on this formally yet, but we're also exploring whether or not it makes sense for us to manage or handle the rebolting on our property. That's a big issue that involves things that we have to deal with related to liability, costs, and also integrating with other organizations who have stepped up to the plate and have been handling that in the past. But that's another issue or item that we're going to be addressing this year. The last thing I'll circle back to is the U.S. Forest Service Management Plan. As that starts to be implemented, it is likely that you're going to hear about projects where the coalition will partner with the U.S. Forest Service to improve certain climbing areas that are on U.S. Forest Service property. I'm not sure that that's going to get done this year, but it's in the works. I think that's what I've got for access, Jake, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer what I can in the Q&A.
Thanks, Jeremy. All right, next I'll pass it up to Curtis Gale Dyer for our conservation and stewardship.
So we've had a busy year last year getting projects done, obviously. We were able to last year get a grant with Athletic Brewing, which helped us to finalize and improve the rival wall area and build some retaining walls underneath some climbs there. Besides that, we started our project over at Verona Wall and is starting to try to rehab that whole area in full totality. We actually just recently cut a new trail, approach trail. So instead of the steep uphill, which could be a mud slug, we now have a new approach trail. But we're having to build multiple terrace levels there all the way up from the bottom to the low belly of the beast. So it'll take us some time. So it's a long-term project for us. But other than that, last year we had other projects we worked on, such as at Nursery, and got some more stabilization there, but we still need more stabilization there. The area has seen more increased use recently, and some of the work we tried to do before has not been sustainable, and we need to improve on that. We did have a good year with over 1,200 hours of volunteer work that was put in. We have also increased the trail system by a few more miles, mainly due to the fact that we are rerouting one of the trails that go, main trails at Miller that goes all the way out to Neverland and Camelot, which will allow for a much easier access and prevent further loss of the trail, which has been happening along the creek bed there. We've also worked on trying to start with the committee, talking about other various things such as wildlife and the vegetation on the property and what kind of concepts that we can do with that in terms of stewardship as we move forward, which the committee has been very helpful with, along with, lost the train of thought for a moment I had, so those are the main projects we worked on last year. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I missed. I know Billy's been working on trying to get the roads maintained and making sure Miller Fork is in shape, and also been working with the county to make sure that Hell Creek Road has been maintained to allow for better access into the area. Let's see. And then this year, as we've already talked about, we're going to be trying to work on doing more stabilization at Chaos along with nursery and continuing at Brono. And then I think those are the main highlights and points that I want to make right now. Try to keep it short and simple. If there's any other further specific questions about any projects or anything else we're working on, planning on doing this year, or if you have a group that wants to volunteer and do a trail day, I can definitely answer those questions in the Q&A.
Cool. Thank you, Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we'll move on to Brianna with the Education, DEI, and Outreach.
Thanks, Jake. Hey, everybody. My name's Brianna. I've been the chair of the Education, DEI, and Outreach Committee since its inception in 2020. And since 2020, we have grown and done a lot, and we'll kind of walk through what some of those are. But, our key message that we always want to get across when we're talking about these initiatives is that we value world-class rock climbing opportunities found in the Red River Gorge as a national treasure, deserving of our best efforts to preserve it for all climbers to enjoy, experience, and appreciate. As you know, we're not an organization that exists to just protect the land. We exist to protect the land for climbing access, and we are climbers, and so we are human beings, and we want to recognize that the work that we're doing is for all climbers to enjoy. So a number of the initiatives that we worked on in 2022, are a lot of the initiatives that we've been working on for a while. So you've likely heard of our Climb Late initiative. And if not, it's our gym initiative, which exists to remove systemic and financial barriers to entry into rock climbing and facilitate a safer space in the rock climbing gym for marginalized community members. So Black, Indigenous, people of color, folks from the LGBTQIA2S+ community, the adaptive climbing community, first-time climbers, and those climbers who don't have financial means to be able to afford climbing gym memberships, climbing gym access, rentals, all that kind of stuff. So the goal is to break down those barriers in climbing and bring people together by building community, empowering and amplifying underrepresented voices, and making a space to learn together, because none of this can happen unless we're able to learn together. So what Climb Late does is offers free admission and rentals at partnering local gyms for the communities described above. So in 2022, we hosted 16 events in 3 states serving over 300 individuals. We partnered with Climb Time Oakley here in Cincinnati, RockQuest in Cincinnati, North Mass Boulder in Indianapolis, and LEF Climbing in Lexington. So 3 different cities, 3 different states, 4 different gyms. And we also received thousands of dollars in donations for this program from AL81, who's our key stakeholder. And, the name is sort of a play on words, AL8, Climb Late. We also received funding from Muir Valley, Access Fund, and a number of other organizations and individuals who are supporting this program. I think this year we came close to raising about $10,000. So a lot of support for the program. We're really excited to see it grow. And in a second, I'm going to talk about what we have planned for this year. So Billy mentioned earlier Rock Late. And so, our goal is to get kids and adults who haven't had access to climbing into the gym, but also we want to facilitate that transition into the outdoors. And so that's what birthed Rock Late. It's an initiative which exists to introduce first-time climbers and those from those marginalized communities that I mentioned to the sport of rock climbing in the Red River Gorge. So this past year, we hosted 2 outdoor trips in 2022. We partnered with local businesses and nonprofits to make the trips possible, and we introduced over 30 individuals to rock climbing for the first time in the Red River Gorge, which feels incredible. And some of those climbers, some of those brand new climbers live maybe like an hour or less from the Red River Gorge, and we were able to facilitate opportunity for them to get outside and experience this place that we love so much for the first time. So those are 2 of our big programs that this committee is facilitating and talking through and working on all year. And we also oversee our Gym to Cred curriculum. So this is a program that's existed way longer than I've been on the board, but has grown in curriculum, in how we're communicating this information, as well as in the number of partners and gyms and organizations that we work with. So these are in-depth discussions about what to expect for your first time climbing outside, specifically in the Red River Gorge, and what to expect on our land. So in 2022, we hosted 7 Gym to Crags. We connected with 2 universities, 4 climbing gyms, and hosted 1 virtual presentation. We also created educational videos on Gym to Crag ethics with a grant we received in 2021 from Access Fund. So many of you might have seen us promoting these Gym to Crag videos. They're really funny. We did a great job. Yeah, those are available as well, and are videos that we hope to utilize throughout the year, whether promoting different ethics that we might be talking about at the moment. So those are our large 3 initiatives. And some of the opportunities that you all can expect from us in 2023 from this specific committee, we plan and already have scheduled 18 Climb Late events, which feels incredible. 18 events in 4 different gyms in 3 different states, providing free climbing in Lexington, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis. So 3 big cities. We know these folks are coming to the Red. They consider it their hometown or their home crag. They're coming from these cities. So Lexington, Cincinnati, and Indy. We want to introduce at least 30 individuals from marginalized and underrepresented communities to outdoor rock climbing in the Red River Gorge. So our goal is to host 2 events this year as well. And we've thankfully received funding to be able to do so. And then we want to host at least 6 Gym to Crags, so 1 possibly every other month, connecting with local gyms, climbing clubs, and universities across this tri-state region. I feel like we're already on a really great track with these. We've already hosted a number of them already. So you can likely expect that we're going to be hosting more than 6 Gym to Crag events this year. And so along with that, as was mentioned earlier, this committee is working on an archaeological policy. We understand that, there are historical and indigenous artifacts that exist all around us on our land and beyond, right? And so we want to set up an archaeological policy working with archaeologists and stakeholders, the Forest Service, tribal liaisons, to develop a policy for the community on how we behave when we see these resources, how we identify them, what are those next steps, and how do we look at future acquisitions, understanding that these are federally protected artifacts and we want to get ahead of the curve instead of finding one at a crag on a route 10 years from now. So we want to get ahead of the game there. We're developing this policy with a number of really important key stakeholders, as I mentioned, alongside archaeologists and other educated individuals who are helping advise us on this. And yeah, we're committed to promoting diversity in all facets of climbing. We're dedicated to creating safer spaces in the outdoors and want everyone to feel welcome on our property. We're not just all are welcome, but the space was created with people in mind. And so the outdoors are for everyone, and that is what we're trying to promote with this. And so, y'all are welcome to ask any questions at the end, and I'll pass it off to whoever's next.
Thank you, Brianna. Next, we're just going to go over some of the events and fundraising opportunities that we had. So primarily events, of course, is Rocktoberfest and Johnny and Alex Trail Day. So 2022 is a great year for Rocktoberfest. Billy and the committee did a great job finding those new opportunities and sponsors with North Face, Yeti, Bailout, Arc'teryx, Camp, Elemental, just really awesome sponsors coming in that we may not have had recently or even previously. North Face, Yeti, Bailout, they're all new to us. And we had some really cool, the climbing wall. We had a drop tower with Bailout showing their rappel device, and just really cool event with a lot of different things going on. So we had a gross revenue of over $100,000, which was a goal of ours for last year. And it's just really incredible to see the sponsors and attendees alike show up and allow us to raise funds in that way. And Rocktoberfest is really growing, and it has grown from what it was, 25 years ago. So again, over 1,000 attendees. We had even more clinics this year. And then we introduced a new event by Scarpa, the Holler Dash, with some, fun and games. You see the photo down there of Eric Cloker and some of just the kooky outfits that people are wearing during that run. It's just a really good time. And then we did have some awesome films, the Crux documentary. We had some really cool presentations. We did have a little bit of sound issues during the events. We apologize for that. We'll hope to improve on that next year, but it's really cool to show, especially some of the local things with Sunny Yang and the Crux. And then one of my favorite things was just really honoring some of our legacy members, the folks that made the RRGCC and really some of the climbing in the Red just what it is. And without them, we may not be having this meeting today. So really just honoring those and really showing our appreciation to those members and giving those legacy awards out was just a really nice touch for the event this year. Really looking forward to this year, 2023. Already started planning that one. And if it's anything like Red in a Day, the Red River Reunion event coming up, I'm sure it's just going to be even bigger. So next, Johnny and Alex Trail Day. Curtis went over for 2023. There's a lot of projects going on, but 2022 we had over 100 volunteers, completed those 12 projects, had a really good time despite some rain, some heat, even a power outage. It was honestly a pretty fun party. Band played through some adversity with the power outage. It's just a really good time, and I'm looking forward to the event again this year. So I will pass this on to Matt for some finances.
Thank you, Jake. So another great year. I think we were pretty on pace with what we saw last year. I think a lot of this is in part due to our volunteers, our sponsorships, everything the board is currently doing, how we're trying to grow. The membership program is growing at a great rate. And I think looking at last year, it's a little bit lower, but last year had a lot more grants. So if we look at just operations alone, we're actually looking at about a 7% revenue growth. That the membership program grew last year from about 35,000 to about 43,000 this year, which is amazing. And I think where we're growing to is going to allow us to act on some of the things I think Jeremy had mentioned with property and expand some of our different programs to allow us to, I think, grow, expand our reach and our presence in the red. You want to go to the next slide, Jake? With, I think, how everyone else is feeling over the last year, their probably personal expenses are growing. We're also feeling the same thing. We did see an uptick in expenses, but the distribution amongst our different committees and classes still remained relatively the same. No large capital expenditures last year. I think the largest were due to some of the flooding, which required us to invest about $20,000 into our roads and parking lots.
Cool. Well, thanks, Matt. It's always nice to see how we're doing financially. I'm going to pass it on to Nick. He's the chair of our membership and fundraising committee, and looking at some of our acknowledgments from 2022. Is Nick on?
I'm back. I was on mute. While I was on mute, I was thanking all of our members for joining. And if you haven't joined yet, I encourage you to do so. It's a great way to become involved in everything that we're doing, to stay active, not just at Rocktoberfest, but Jake sends a monthly newsletter out. You can see different other ways to get involved, whether it's a trail day or helping, Curtis or Billy in a bind on a project, whether it's any events that we have. It'll keep you more in tune and being a part of this nonprofit, which relies entirely on gifts. And so I would certainly want to thank all of our individual donors that are listed here. I don't want to mention everybody by name, but please look at them. And it's not just the individual donors that are important, whether it's $5 or $15 for the people that just say, oh yeah, I go to the property for free. I'll donate $15 for my trip. We see that a lot of individual donors. Jake, is there another slide that has just the numbers? So our corporate sponsors, obviously AL81, Quantrill Subaru, the North Face, and Yeti, $5,000 plus. We have so many great supporters at all different levels. And so again, if individually, I encourage you, and if you're an employer or you are a business owner, at any level, I encourage you to participate financially. At the end of the day, as the nonprofit, what we do outreach, we do events, but at the end of the day, when we want to buy property, it comes from grants or donations, and that's just the reality of being a nonprofit. And so, obviously from the entire board, we can't, from every single climber in Red River Gorge Coalition property, thank you to these sponsors, thank you to the individual donors. It is the lifeblood of a nonprofit organization. So, and if you're on the call and you've donated, thank you individually.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Yeah, we definitely wouldn't be able to do what we do without our donors. So it's really nice to see and just show that appreciation to those individuals and those organizations. All right, so we're nearing the end here. So just a brief overview of some important dates: Red River Reunion and Red in a Day competition. That is on April 14th and 15th. On that Friday, we have a cool happy hour at Red Point, just like we did at Rocktoberfest. You can check in for the Red in a Day comp there. Today is the last day for pre-registration on the Red in a Day comp. So if you and your partner are interested in doing that, I would definitely recommend trying to sign up today for that cheaper price. It's going to be a great event. Hopefully, I think we said we have over 20 teams already, so it's just going to be a big party. It's really going to be exciting to see. So that event on the 15th will announce the winners and all of those fun things. And so moving on, Johnny and Alex Trail Days currently scheduled for June 24th. Should be plenty of work for everybody, lifting rocks, hopefully cutting some trails. And then Rocktoberfest is that 5th through 8th weekend. Should be a good time, like always. We have plenty of small events this year. You've probably seen some trivia nights we've had in Lexington. We've planned some of those in Cincinnati, in Louisville. So we'll be on the lookout. Follow us on social media for those. And then Jim DeCrags, like Brianna mentioned, and Climb Late. Climb Late, you can see the full schedule on social media as well as on our website. And then Jim DeCrag will post those as those become locked in. I think we have one this week in Lexington. So those are coming through in different cities for the Jim DeCrags. And then lastly here, those quarterly newsletters we've talked about. Everybody who's donated in the last 365 days or is a Access Fund or RRGCC member should be receiving those. If you're not receiving those in your email, please reach out to me. I'll make sure to see why you're not receiving those. Or if you just forget where they are in your email, you can go onto our website and find those listed there. So that is it. We'll open it up to Q&A. I'm looking at the chat. I don't think we have anything in here yet, but feel free to either come off mute or type your questions in the chat. All right, we must have done a pretty good job. And looks like we have almost 40 people on, so that's great. We really appreciate you all being here for this event and showing that you're interested in all the things the coalition is doing. It's just really nice to see that support.
One question regarding the land acquisition you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea on a timetable on that, or?
Yeah, the one that is most likely to be completed, I think it's probably unlikely that I'll be able to announce it this year, but I'm working towards that schedule. But if you think about it, if there's land acquisition that involves either a donation or purchase of property, there's a lot of due diligence we have to do and a lot of mechanics that have to get figured out. So some of the things, I'll give you an example, is in the state of Kentucky, landowners can write their own deed descriptions. So you might look at a deed that was originally written in the 1800s that says from a tree with an X hacked into it to a P carved in a cliff, following the cliff line over to a creek, and then back again. And those sorts of metes of bounds that were written by property owners are really difficult to understand. So there's a lot of due diligence that comes in trying to make sure we know what we're getting into. So one part is understanding the property ownership. The second piece is, and I think Jake alluded to this a little bit earlier, there was a piece of property with some high quality existing climbing that came on the market in the summer last year, and we put in an offer. We were able to, the offer was accepted. but we already had suspicions that the seller didn't really own the property. And that is what happened. But the coalition stepped up, made the commitment to make a pretty substantial purchase for this area. Then we were able to do the additional due diligence, and eventually through that research, we were able to unfortunately inform the seller that they didn't actually own what they were selling. And that's just an example of the kind of stuff that we could get into. And that's the kind of due diligence we have to do, because if we're going to spend $100,000 or more on a piece of property, we need to make sure we really own it. So that's part of the problem. The second piece there is, how do we access the property? Do we have roads and a place to park? Do we have trail access? If we have to cross over some other person's property, do we have appropriate easements and things like that in place? So unfortunately, that stuff takes a lot of time, and we have several really cool opportunities. If we announce one this year, I will be super excited. But it may really bleed into next year. But I'm working towards this year. I'd really love to get it done this year.
Yeah, thank you for that question. We have a question in the chat, Charlie. Is there any specific volunteer experience the RRGCC is looking for? I would say just as a nonprofit in general, we're always looking for that accounting, finance, and then of course legal. Those two are always in the need. I don't think anybody would ever turn those skills away. I'll let anybody else, if they want to chime in for any other needs that you think we have.
You mean, speaking from the Access Committee, folks who have, a survey experience, legal experience in real estate is obviously super useful. Honestly, people who have relationships or are willing to try to build relationships with local landowners is a big deal too. I live in Cincinnati, and obviously I get down to the red to climb a lot, but it's shaking hands and speaking to people face to face is super important. So if that's something you're interested in, that's something that committee, needs people on the ground who are friendly and want to, talk to the landowners.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. Good question. Any other questions? All right, Mike, would it be possible to work with local climbing gyms to raise awareness about RRGCC to help educate and recruit new members and donors, like an informative kiosk or something? Yeah, that is something that we're working with this year. It's slow moving, but with a lot of the events that we've put together, say in Lexington, Cincinnati, trying to increase some of the member programs and visibility that we can have at those gyms. Brianna, she's always at Climb Lake. We're in every single gym around the region. So trying to add some things into those events, as well as maybe doing some partnerships with them for the member program, are things that we're really working towards. So hopefully we can get those completed this year.
Yeah, and just to add to that, last night it was a great example of the 4 climbing gyms in Cincinnati that came together to host a fundraiser for the RRGCC. We had a real rock showing here in Cincinnati, and all 4 gyms that exist in Cincinnati rallied for us. And so we're trying to continue to do that through our various small events. And it's something that we've absolutely seen grow in the last, 3 or 4 years, just building and connecting with those climbing gyms. And we're really grateful for the support that they have provided.
Yeah, that event was really great to see everybody come together. Thanks for mentioning that. Daniel Dunn, glad that you could be here. And huge shout out to Curtis and Audrey. They're obviously doing fantastic work on all of our lands, even those relationships with the Forest Service. So just huge shout out to them. They were awarded an Access Fund Climbing Advocate Award this year, and definitely well deserved. Totally agree. And thanks, Daniel, for being here. All right. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour. Typically try to keep this around an hour. Any last minute questions for us?
Mind if I say one thing, Jake?
Absolutely.
Obviously in a forum like this, you may have questions you want to ask, but don't feel comfortable. So use the RRGCC at rrgcc.org, or if you run into board members at the Crag or in the Red, feel free to grab us and have a chat. So, we are approachable and would love to talk.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, seems like it's a little quiet. I will, again, this meeting will be recorded. So, when we send that out, if you watch it again or have someone else, if you have any questions later on, like Jeremy said, feel free to reach out to us. But thank you all for joining. Really appreciate your support. Oh, Mike, another question. Sneaking it in at the end. Additional question. As a regular member living in Indianapolis, how can I help the coalition more from this distance other than financial contributions? The easy answer here is Johnny and Alex Trail Day, volunteering for Rocktoberfest. Curtis does a really good job of having, monthly or, frequent trail days. So I'm sure Curtis could find a place for you to move some rocks, things like that. And then of course, if you're interested in joining a committee, nowadays, a lot of this is virtual as we're doing now. So we definitely, anybody on the call, if you're interested in joining a committee, any of our committees, please feel free to reach out. If you, review this, you can see those chairs and you can reach out to them directly, or on our website, about us, you can see the chairs of each committee and reach out to them, or just as a whole, RRGCC at rrgcc.org, and we can help find a place for you. We're always trying to build out those committees, and eventually, hopefully move those committee members up to board members and see. So yeah, really, I would say trail days or committees, anybody, please.
Yeah, and just one more plug is we will be in Indianapolis on Friday for Climb Late, and I can always use help at those if that's, a passion of yours and gets you excited. And you mentioned that living more distance. We do have a board member in Indianapolis, so you're never too far away. I think a lot of people consider the Red their home crag, and an hour and 45 minutes isn't too far. I drive further to get to the Red.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, thanks everybody for joining. Have a great night, and hopefully we see you guys out. Thank you all.